Okay, so just using these four basic identities, tangent equals sine over cosine, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1, 1 plus tangent squared equals secant squared, and 1 plus cotangent squared equals cosecant squared. And really, these two are just follow immediately from this one, as long as you remember how to divide everything through by sine or cosine squared. These two really allow us to do all sorts of neat things. Let me actually show you an illustration of this. Well, I think they're neat. They allow us to do something, and whether it's neat or not, I suppose, is a subjective thing. But I think they're neat, and so therefore I'm going to talk about it. When you have a web page with your video on it, you say it's neat, I'll watch you. I will. By the way, if you have any videos, let me know, and if you're watching me right now, I'll watch you. It's only fair. It really is. It's true. I'll do it. I mean, but keep them clean. But in fact, if they're not clean, I'll watch them as well. Maybe I'll watch them more than once. In fact, well, now that's just a joke. It's just a joke. All right. Anyway, here's the thing. Suppose that I'm going to get fired any minute. Suppose that the sine of theta, we're told, is 3/4. And we also know that where theta lives. Theta, suppose, just lives between pi over 2 and pi. And now I want to use the trig identities that we talked about to find all the other trig functions. All the other trig functions. But so I'm not allowed to use any tricks except the trig identities. So let me just remind you, if theta is between pi over 2 and pi, where does that mean theta is living? It means that theta is living somewhere inside here. That's the second quadrant. That's the second quadrant. So it's not surprising that the sign should be positive there, because remember, all students take calculus. The sign should be positive here. So in fact, that's consistent. But we have to remember we're in the second quadrant. So notice that all the other trig functions, in fact, should be negative except for cosecant. So in fact, everybody should be negative, and we're in this region. Okay, so now how am I going to do that? So you have to remember that. That's important, that those things have to be negative. Well, let's find cosine. And the way we can find cosine is by noting that we know one of the identities, the Pythagorean identity, is that sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Okay, well, we know what sine is. That's 3/4. So sine squared theta will be 3/4 squared, which is 9/16. So this is actually 9/16 plus cosine squared theta equals 1. So if I bring the 9/16 over to this side, I would see that cosine squared theta would equal 1. Well, 1 minus 9/16. Well, 1 is just 16/16 minus 9/16 would be 7/16. Okay, now cosine squared theta equals 17/16. So to find just cosine theta, I have to take square roots of both sides. But remember, plus or minus. So I see cosine theta will be plus or minus the square root of 7/16, which equals plus or minus the square root of 7 divided by 4, because the square root of 16 is 4. But which sign do I want, plus or minus? Well, look what quadrant I'm in. Remember, I'm in the second quadrant. Will the cosine be positive or negative in the second quadrant? Well, all students take calculus, so only the sine and cosecant are positive there. Therefore, the cosine will be negative. So this piece of information tells me which answer I should take. In this case, I should take the negative answer, because cosine is negative in the second quadrant. You see how I use that fact there? So what I see is cosine of theta equals minus square root of 7 over 4. That negative sign came from here. Okay, so I was given sine. That was the first thing I had. And now, using identity, I was able to find cosine. How could I find tangent? Well, that's no problem, because I know that tangent is sine over cosine. So in fact, tangent, using another identity, will equal this number divided by that number. So what is that? Well, let's do that as a little side calculation here. That would equal this number, 3/4, divided by minus square root of 7 over 4, which if I invert and multiply will be 3/4 times minus 4 over square root of 7. And if I cancel the 4's away, I see minus 3 over square root of 7. So that's the tangent. And really, that's the end of the show, because once we know these three, I can get the other ones just by inspection. In fact, I won't even write them down. I'll just say them. What would cosecant be? Well, cosecant would be the reciprocal of sine. So that would be 4/3. What would be secant theta? Secant theta would be the reciprocal of cosine, which would be minus 4 over the square root of 7. What would be cotangent? That would be the reciprocal of tangent, which would be minus the square root of 7 over 3. just flipping everything. So in fact, you can see how I can use trig identities and knowing which quadrant I'm in to actually find all the values of the trig functions just knowing one. Notice, by the way, the important thing to notice is that when you're solving some of these things, you get two solutions. The sign of that solution will depend upon where that angle is. Okay, so be careful. Okay, I'll see you soon.